I am Joshua K. Sabra, Esquire, and he is Dr. Miles Salisbury. And you are listening to the Miles Ahead podcast, where we share tactics, techniques, and protocol to improve your physical, mental, and spiritual health while you walk the path of the warrior. Stay tuned. In this episode of the Miles Ahead podcast, Dr. Miles and I discuss what is the experience of most people right around the time they enter therapy. What are they going through in terms of symptoms? What are they experiencing psychologically? What are the mistakes that they're making while they try to self-diagnose and solve these things? And then how does a provider get into the details and help get them on the right track? So today you're going to learn about the true source of dysfunction when it comes to your emotional and mental health, and along with a lot of the deeper clinical diagnosis and definitions of different problems that people face, whether it's depression, anxiety, or learned helplessness, and how to tell when your mind and your brain is trying to lie to you and to outthink you, or if you're trying to think your way out of a mental and emotional problem. So stay tuned. And we're live. We're back. We're talking today about, we're going to piggyback off of the conversation that we had last week about how to have successful, authentic relationships, because that was a really good one. We got lots of good feedback on that from listeners. And on our walk or ruck today, I asked you some questions about some of the success stories you had, and you were sharing that the reason why so many people come in are because of relationship issues, but those are the symptoms of their problem, not the real problem 3 or 4 layers deep. And so we got talking. So I have so many questions. So we'll get into that in terms of the intention today. But I wanted to ask what you've been listening to. How are you? How are you feeling? Coming down off Zen?
On balance, a little better. Still slow wean. Got a little heartburn, distress thing going on as part of the physical withdrawals. So the mental parts are starting to calm, which is good. Now it's more like just the physical recalibration. Your brain, something with acetylcholine and catecholamines has something to do with your central nervous system regulation. So that affects the way your body tells your GI system to work and stuff. So now it's sort of like, what are we doing? And it's freaking out. So I've woken up in the middle of the night with really, really bad heartburn. It feels like my gallbladder's about to explode. So another reason to never touch nicotine, folks. It's just not worth it. It really is like playing with fire. Highly, highly recommend. Just don't go there. It's really a doozy. I mean, some people joke. I've looked on Reddit forums about nicotine withdrawal, and some people this was worse than opiate withdrawal. I'm like, really? I was like, yeah, this was harder to quit than heroin. What? And now I kind of get it. I mean, the symptoms with opiate withdrawal may be worse, but they go away quicker. Not nicotine. And dopamine receptors take a full month to kind of get back to baseline. After you can get opiates out within 72 hours, and you'll feel junk for a while, but the physical stuff's gone. Nicotine takes so long. It affects so much of your body. So learning a lot. And it gives me a flavor of what my folk go through who have addiction problems and what their experience is like. I've learned a lot about it, but now I have a personal experience, even though it's not a hard drug. I've never gone through meth withdrawal or opiate withdrawal, alcohol withdrawal. But now I get a flavor of what that darkness feels like. It's a psychological and physical darkness. It's really hard. And this is just a light version. So it's given me a grand appreciation for what addicts have to go through, and then to maintain, your sobriety or whatever. So it's been not fun, but it's getting there. Our ruck was nice today. Got really good weather. Went to Tryon Creek. Nice to wear the plate carrier again. Get ready for the Murph. If you don't know what the Murph is, it's an honorary workout to Michael Murphy, who was a Navy SEAL. If you've seen or read the book Lone Survivor, Marcus Luttrell was the lone survivor. Michael Murphy was the one that went. They didn't have any comms; they were out of reception. He went up to a high points on the mountain and put his, I don't know if it's a sat phone or even a cell phone, up as high as he could to do like a pin drop. This is where we are, and he knew he was going to get shot because he exposed himself to fire, and he saved the rest of most of his team for a while, but only Luttrell survived. So they do a workout in dedication to that heroic act. And it's a 1 mile run. And then you do, 100 pull-ups, 300 air squats, and 100 burpees, 200 burpees. Was it?
Push-ups.
200 push-ups. Not burpees, no burpees. And then you cap it off with another mile run while wearing a 25 pound ruck and or plate carrier. Plate carrier just means basically like a ballistics vest. You can put weights in it, or you can just wear your ballistic plates if you want to. You should definitely pull out the ones you have from
Bosnia.
Yeah, exactly. They're probably 40 pounds, but hey, you're getting after it. So we're preparing for that, which happens every May. Just look up the Murph Challenge online if you're curious. It's a good workout in general. You could do it once a month, really good for you, but it's a good thing to do in honor of. So we did a little test run of that hike with our weight load-bearing vests, and you had a backpack, a rucksack. And that was good. Got to get some sunlight, talk about what we're going to talk about. We met some future guests on the path, as always do. We got some future guests coming up. We serendipitously ran into today. We won't get into that yet, but you'll be surprised when they come on because they're pretty amazing people. Yeah, I'm hanging in, staying with it. And what are you listening to right now?
Well, I'm just sad for you that you don't get to have any vices. Seems like all your favorite little addictions or your vices became addictions.
Security blankets.
And that's unfortunate. I feel like everybody should have a couple of vices so that you don't, one, just be boring and unrelatable. But two, vices are fun. I have a friend who took up drinking pour over coffee because he didn't drink, didn't like sweets, didn't smoke, never used drugs. Just was one of those boring, happy people that just wanted something to do. And so you started to do a coffee every morning, and you got into it,
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be like that person. I actually like that. I used to be that way, and I want to be that way again. And you just feel better. I don't want a vice because for me, it's like they just become addictive. These turn into security blankets for numbing out when you're really stressed, or to cover up wounds or trauma or distract you. And if those are really active, they're great ways to tamp them down, but then there's a blast radius and price to be paid for that. So I'm trying not to do that and actually feel what I'm feeling, address what's going on, instead of doing that. So, I like half a glass of wine, or I love scotch from time to time, but the alcohol, I could take it or leave it. I don't like the way it makes me. I don't like hangovers. I don't like all that shit. So I left that in the college years. But I do like to have something like that once in a while. So I guess there's that. I love coffee. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. I wish, no, I don't wish. I've tried everything, and I liked it all for about 3 days, whatever it was. And right now I'm going through this pushback where I think every human goes through this phase with alcohol, if you're a drinker at all, where it was nice to have a cocktail, every other night or at the end of a long day. Now, if I just have one drink, it doesn't make me feel good. So it's like I've lost my general taste for it, which is strange. But we should do an episode on vices, because they're they're fun. They can be like a ceremonial putting down of burdens, like the mixing of the cocktail, or like, if you have a little mini cigar, it's about 30 minutes of sitting down. You're not going to go anywhere. You're going to be outside smoking and, it's like a pause.
Yeah, you're connecting with people. That's positive.
Mhm.
Yeah, set and setting, context, limits. Sure.
Yeah. But I wasn't a smoker when I was in the Army. When I was probably one of a handful of people who didn't smoke when my unit was in Afghanistan, and I felt like David Spade from that sitcom Just Shoot Me. There's like packs of cigarettes all around his house, and I'm like, "Oh my God, are you a smoker?" He's like, "No, I've been trying to start."
Good man.
I had to, so I didn't like cigarettes. So I had these little mini cigars. So whenever we would stop for a set up patrol base or something, everybody would be, working, and then everybody would pull out their smokes, and I would just be like, "Oh, it's smoke time."
You've been nursing that for like 3 months. That's the healthy way, yes. And then you can keep breathing, and they couldn't. Rucking is much easier if you have lungs.
Yeah, when you're 20, it doesn't seem like anything is nothing is impossible for you. But
I miss those days.
I've been listening to Pearl Jam.
Oh, classic.
Yeah, they came through town on Friday night, and I saw it on my phone, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to take the girlfriend to a show.
Oh, you went?
Yeah, so I went down to the Moda Center.
They played Moda?
Yeah.
I saw them there once back in the day.
They sound exactly the same.
Amazing.
Eddie Vedder is legend. The crowd looked like it looked like it was back in the 90s. Everyone had flannel, and the scenesters were right on time. I
love his lyrics because it's like looking at modern art. You just make your own meaning because you can't tell what the fuck he's saying. So you just make up your own words.
I was just reading Even Flow, and he is a great metaphor. We could do a whole podcast on just Pearl Jam. It's he's such a powerful lyricist, like Better Man, classic. They played that for that was a song that was part of a gender studies, women's studies documentary about masculinity. But Even Flow is about the homeless, and a homeless man that he met many times on his way to work. And Eddie Vedder is super compassionate, and it feels like the power chords and the grunge rock that comes out over the top of those lyrics doesn't make sense unless you think about the fact that anger is the highest form of compassion. And there's a lot of, the tour that he's on is called Dark Matter. And all by the way, he's the last man standing of all the grunge singers. There's only a handful left alive. Alice in Chains, Stone Temple Pilots, Chris Cornell from Soundgarden.
Not anymore.
Like everybody.
Foo Fighters, you can count Dave Grohl.
Yeah, Dave Grohl made it out for Nirvana and started a different band, which Foo Fighters are not grunge, but Foo Fighters arena rock for sure.
Badass.
Yeah.
Love those guys.
Really good stuff. But looking at Eddie Vedder's lyrics, a lot of compassion. He's a very sensitive guy, and his music is very compassion oriented. And then you listen to his voice; he's wailing. He's got that grunge wail, and he's in pain. And then it's of course just hard power chords throughout most of the concert, and awesome experience. If you're not familiar with Pearl Jam, just pop it up on Spotify and listen to just about anything. They sound great 30 years ago. They sound great today. They are pretty awesome stuff. Pretty great artists and wonderful people. And yeah, it was a good time. So that's what I'm listening to. And grunge is probably my favorite genre. Like if I have a default where you could always turn it on, I'd be okay with it. Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, lots of And then there's some modern grunge resurgence, sounds that are coming out.
That's right. You put the Weezer playlist on a lot in the gym.
Oh, 100%.
It's good.
Yeah.
Weezer's another good one.
Yeah, so good. Yep. Black Label Society. There's lots of the second generation.
Yeah.
They're doing better. They're a little more holistically healthy than the OGs.
Yeah, I think as they had the punk rock influence and the lifestyle influence, and not the best for longevity.
Well, and I think the anger, the deep-seated anger, that's the undercurrent of whether it's Nirvana or any of the Stone Temple Pilots,
Alice in Chains.
Yeah, all of it. Real deep hurt.
Yeah.
And that is it comes through.
It does.
And it's cathartic to listen to, but apparently not cathartic enough to make.
Yeah. Yeah, you're there. Kurt Cobain had bipolar disorder. That's the good thing that comes from bipolar is your ability to have strong emotions, high and low. Problem is you get manic and don't sleep, but you have all this energy to make music. Once you spring out the depression where you found all that dark matter, like you said, and then you express it, but you do bad things when you're manic and you don't sleep, and that tanks everything, and you get really, really depressed, and then you get suicidal. And we know what happens after that with him, sadly. But he was an amazing guy otherwise, but untreated bipolar disorder. So they say, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult because lots of people with bipolar have suicidal episodes or ideation, but not everybody who has bipolar disorder will be suicidal or will commit suicide.
Correct. Or super manic, maybe just sometimes. So you have bipolar depression. It's a doozy. And they're different. There's bipolar 1 and 2 and cyclothymia. There's a whole bunch of categories in the soup of bipolar disorder.
Well, let's get into the episode for today, because
you didn't ask what I was listening to.
Oh, I know. So yeah, thank you. But give me what you're listening to, and then let's get in the episode, because I want to.
You're ready.
Yeah. Well, we're just circling the drain. Okay, go for it. Give me what you're listening to.
If people want to know, it came out in the gym. I was like, this song has been covered so many times, and I was like, this is the original. Who the hell is this? It was that Neil Young Heart of Gold song. Just really good. Talk about a cathartic song, feel good song. So that was it, and I downloaded it.
Yeah, Neil Young. So good.
Mm-hmm. He had a house next to the family beach house we had in Hawaii where I got married. It was baller, like amazing. And he recently sold it. I think he sold it for like $11 million. It's probably worth double that now. This was back in 2015. And again, with the rich and famous, you never know who your neighbor is. I was talking about Art Alasakis being my dad's neighbor. He was our family neighbor for a while. We didn't know it for a long time. Crazy. But it was just this big ass compound right next door. It's crazy. But side story. Sorry, ADD brain. Side quests.
Yeah. I wonder if they like that. I'm sure artists and musicians want anonymity.
I'm sure. They probably pay to be normal again, to not be recognized, to not be hounded.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, Neil Young he's a great artist to get stuck on. I love Harvest Moon.
Yeah, I have to dig into him some more. He's got some good stuff. Anyways, you can proceed.
Oh, well, we can proceed. So the last time we chatted, we talked about how to create authentic, healthy relationships and the mistakes that we make, as humans make, along the way of getting in the way of connection and alienating the people we're trying to connect with or talk to. And you mentioned earlier today that people who are coming in to see you for psychotherapy or coaching, or maybe you're just doing psychotherapy now, but people, the most common problem is a relationship problem, or maybe potentially a career problem that they're going through. and there's some sense of like they're not connecting with their partner, they're not connecting with their coworkers or boss, and that sort of starts the conversation. So at the top level, the top of the the layer cake,
It's a
what
good, yeah, it's a layer cake.
what so people reach out or they fill out an inquiry. What are their big problems?
Usually it's the wrapping paper, I call it. The layer cake, it's the icing. They don't know really what's in the middle, and that's what's pushing outwards to be expressed or seen. And it's usually in the form of a symptom, like I'm really depressed, really anxious, and then it's bleeding out into relationships, into work life, or I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. I don't have the tools, and I better go talk to someone and figure out what is going on. They don't know, but they know that it hurts and they need to do something about it. But they haven't really deeply identified where it comes from or know where it comes from. Some people do. They've had prior therapy or they have good insight. But we pull the threads, and we want to go back in time and find out where this began, the origin stories. That's good intel. We don't want to stay stuck there. A lot of therapy is to go back in time when we talk about family, and then like Lori Gottlieb jokes that insight in therapy is the booby prize. Like, hey, we figured it out, and we think it should just vanish. Like, oh, we've solved it. We know where it comes from. No, it's just the trailhead. No, we're actually just starting. So that's usually how it starts, and we unravel.
I love that you said that, because that's one of the biggest, not pet peeves of mine. Yeah, maybe it is a pet peeve, but people get very enthralled with the etiology of the disease.
Mm.
Well, was this genetic? Was this something my mom did to me? Yes, of course. It's your mom's fault. Now give me $150.
Right, exactly. And I don't feel changed. What happened?
The booby prize is like, why are you I think the way that I think about it is like it's the prize that you get for getting something that doesn't help you, like what working for that diagnosis or that sort of initiating factor. And it's not bad to know it. It doesn't hurt you usually, but it's not the solution. As Tony Robbins says, it's coming from your nervous system. There it is. It's part of how you see and interact with the world and your belief structure and identity, whether it was from the factory or from, and as a trauma that you had. It's useful to know those things, but we do have to live out a new truth.
Yeah. And we'll get into sort of learned helplessness as we were talking about earlier. Some people will get a diagnosis or a reason, and then they start identifying with that and go, oh, that's why I'm just this way. And then they don't change because they just label themselves, and then they sort of identify with their diagnosis. I have PTSD, so I'm therefore this way forever. And now I can wear it as a badge of honor and I don't have to do anything, or I can get sympathy. And some people will do that,
Well, let's talk about we'll go deeper through the layer cake, because so we're going through the icing now, which is I'm anxious, depressed, I'm having difficulty connecting, and I'm in pain, I'm not happy. So when someone is in that state, the mistakes we already talked about this a little bit, and some of them are obvious. So if you are going through a problem in your life and you're having difficulty connecting with your partner or multiple partners, if you've dated, a few people and you keep dating the same person or whatever, like it's easy to say like, oh, it's men or women, whichever, or men and women if you're bi and you're dating both. It's people suck. Gen Z, people my age are stupid, right? And
right.
I've said those things. So it's not.
Everyone blames the other generations.
It's not. Yes, it's totally.
That's why Gen X is the best, by the way.
Exactly.
We're just apathetic. We're pragmatic. Yeah, y'all suck.
So there's some mistakes of just like what they call it, attribution error, just like attributing some sort of character trait or to the people around you, whether or not they have it, is not useful to you. So there's some things like that, blaming yourself, blaming other people. What are the other mistakes people make in this state where they're trying to solve a relationship problem or a connection problem or a communication problem, like at work or at home or with their partner?
It's usually avoidance or doubling down.
I love this. So it's very similar. You were explaining to me as like, oh, I'll just work harder. It's like this in the health and fitness industry. People, they think either there's something fundamentally wrong with me, like my hormones are bad, or my genes are bad, or I've got the fat blood, or whatever.
I'm big boned.
Whenever, exactly, there's something wrong with me, or I'm not working hard enough, or I'm not disciplined enough to do it, quote unquote, right. Do whatever it is right.
Yeah.
And so people have that same thing with their interpersonal success or mental health. It's like, well, if I was just more disciplined, I could do this. I could be a better partner, be a better subordinate, be a better boss, be a better whatever. And there might be some truth to that. Like, does take discipline and work to be a good partner, a good boss, a good employee. And that's not the full story.
Correct.
So the mistakes, they're working harder. How does working harder make their life suck more?
You're just doing the thing that sucks more. It's like walking into a wall over and over, realizing they don't realize there's a door next to it. And if I can just go to this wall, and they start banging and banging. Maybe if I take 10 steps back and run fast towards it, like Hulk, I'll just bang through it. Like, it's probably not going to work. So I got to teach them about doors and doorknobs, or making their own doors, or walking around the wall, get out of your own way, so to speak. But it's hard to do that. If you're stuck in a habit loop, you think, I just need to do this harder, or just not at all, I'm just going to avoid it. Fuck that wall, I'm just going to sit. And then you're stuck, This comes from a variety of reasons why people do this. And it's usually learning to collapse into yourself when you didn't get your needs met, and fall on your own sword, and, pout or whatever to try to get attention when you didn't get your needs met, or you rage against the world and you put it outwards. It's usually one of the two, when it's your needs weren't met as a kid, and we're going to sort of the insecure attachment styles again. And so those kind of people are one of the ragers. Like, they become self-made people. They work really hard, and that works in a healthy way for the most part. But if you take it too hard, you're gonna distance yourself from people. Become a workaholic. A good way to avoid, by the way. The blast radius for that, there's a price to be paid. Both those, collapsing and raging, have their benefits. They're adaptive, but when taken to extremes, they actually get us back to square one.
You said a self-made person, and you said that in a way that kind of made it sound like an archetype.
Could be. Yeah, it usually comes from the avoidant attachment style. Screw all these humans. I'll just do it myself. I don't need you. I'm a lone wolf kind of thing. You see it a lot in the work world. That one person that just can't be a team player, has to do it alone, or they want to be the bosses. These guys always show up for the job interview for the boss role, and they present really well, and they sound like they have it all together, and they say all the right things, and they're just terrible leaders. Usually the best leaders are the ones that are pretty humble and almost refuse the position at first, or their boss goes, "Oh, you're really good at that role. Let's make you in charge of it." Like, that's stupid. What leadership qualities do you actually have? We don't even know. You can do the job well, but can you lead? When they think that automatically it's going to translate to leadership, and they become tyrants, and then they expect all their other people to be workers like they are. It's just not the same. That's one flavor. There's multiple flavors here.
Well, there's the self-made person. The way that you stated it almost was like a pejorative, and that it was anti-collaborative, and you called it avoidant. So it's just like a anti-dependent kind of.
Yeah.
I don't need people. People just are a lot of work. I don't want to do that work.
Correct. Yeah, and we're talking about this in pejorative. There are good qualities to a self-made person, for sure. But those people that are healthy still have relationships and families.
Well, this is a whole different tangent. Everyone is self-made. We usually give that label when we have a inflated sense of ego.
Bingo. Even the collapsers are self-made. Well said.
And so, okay, so they're in this place. They're going to double down and work harder. They're going to drive through and they're going to do more of what is already not working. And this is like this is what I call the diet treadmill in the fitness industry. It's like, I did keto once. It worked really well, but then I gained 15 pounds back, and I gained the weight back and then 15 pounds more. It's like, well, that didn't work well. then, obviously. And number two, so you're going back and you're gonna keto harder.
I'm going to eat nothing for a month.
Just raw whole eggs.
Yeah.
And so they get in this treadmill of like it's a rubber band. Instead of evolving the system and evolving the skill set and mindset, it's just to go back to the thing that gave me a sense of control.
That is well said. It's about control.
So a person comes to you and they're in this sort of they can kind of feel that they're in Groundhog's Day. That's why they reached out to you.
Yes.
And you start to pull on the thread and get revealed that, you know, where someone might have said, I need career coaching. As you start to pull the thread and go ask second and third order questions, realize that they have a definition of love and belonging that requires them to contribute. And they might have a definition of, you know, their identity that is, I'm a person that does X, Y, or Z. And so there's some core to the values, identity, inner framework that that person was unaware of is why they were not going to be happy in any situation.
Correct. Yeah, it's like archaeology. You're going a little dig at first. That's why you got to explore the past, but we don't want to stay there. But from the past spring the strategies and tactics they need to come out of it to do whatever else. And then it's about self-empowerment. You know, I'm not giving advice and giving guidance. I might give a flavor advice if they ask, but that's not really my job. I help them find their way and empower themselves. But they just don't know. They have blind spots. We all have blind spots. And we shine a light on that and go, oh, that was in the shadow. And we pull things out of the shadows.
This is deep because when you tell someone what to do, you basically just co-opt their authority and responsibility for themselves.
Correct.
But when you give them the use of a tool that they didn't know existed, then like when you teach someone what a boundary is, who doesn't know, you give them a set of tools that completely changes the way they look at the world. And now you've changed their mind and you didn't give them any advice.
No, that's a thing. Let me try it. And then they do the heavy lifting. Like in personal training, you go, hey, this is a workout you can do. You're not lifting the weights for them. You're just giving them good form. You give them a little critique here and there, and you're a cheerleader.
That's exactly right. That's my Enneagram archetype.
Boom. The cheerleader.
Yeah, I'm a 7. You give them the tools. So you mentioned a bunch of different. So you have the symptoms, which are like unhappiness, disconnection, not feeling good about themselves, and then the problems that are causing those symptoms. You threw out a bunch, but one of them was learned helplessness. What are some of the other? You said lack of vision. Tell me more about some of the most common problems that are creating the discord in their life.
Yeah, blind spots. They have pain, but they don't know where it's coming from. Or they have pain and they project it on something immediate into their life. That's really easy to do. I'm really mad at my boss and he's an asshole. And it's like, oh, well, we dig. It's like you have maybe father issues. It's called transference. He's kicking that up within you. He behaves and says things very similar to your dad who was really hard with you or something. And it didn't make the connection or whatever, you know. We just kind of have to dig a little bit. The symptom is just the icing on the layer cake, and it matters, but we always tend to project in our immediate environment that's the problem. You know, it just triggers the deeper shadow roots.
So like in that example you gave, someone has expectations that they set for you, and that is a reminder that reminds you of a feeling that you had. This is all unconscious, by the way.
So a lot of it is unconscious.
For me, the same thing. I don't know what I'm doing too, and I can give some examples of my unconscious behaviors and feelings. But when you have that feeling come up that you don't know is happening, you're unaware of, like, someone sets an expectation and gives you a deadline, then that you have this memory of your a fractured relationship you have with a authority figure, maybe your parent or father, like you said. And I remember my father being mad at me and me feeling shame. That shame is coming up.
Bingo.
just in that conversation. And now I'm pissed at my boss because of something the boss doesn't know. Boss is like, hey, Miles, on Friday, I need that report done. You've had 3 weeks, and you've stated that you're on track. So I'm going to need that now. All of a sudden you're pissed.
Yeah.
And you don't know why. And your boss certainly doesn't know why. And so now if you flake or avoid, your boss is just going to be, the consequences are going to be yours, not your boss's.
And he's going to double down on you.
Yeah. And I think lots of business leaders and coaches talk about this in the space of like the people on their team going through things and not narrating what's going on with them. So all of a sudden, I think Simon Sinek was talking about hiring, a Gen Zer or a millennial, someone who is like very boundaried, but would overshare and burden everyone on the team with what's going on with them. And his team members didn't know how to deal with it. So like his team was taking more time off to get away from this person. And one of them quit. And he's like, I'm burned out. You're not burned out. You work 26 hours a week. I know your schedule. Like you're my assistant. Like what are you talking about? and in pulling the thread, he's like, oh, there's this person on our team that is overwhelming everyone. And
they say they have boundaries, and oversharing, that's actually not boundaries.
That's not, it's not emotional professionalism or even self-awareness.
It's a lack of boundary.
Right. It's a lack of boundaries. And, but they had boundaries that for him, I can't work on the weekends. I can't do this.
Right.
All these requirements.
I need a trigger warning.
Yeah. And, run your team however you like. I think like I always ran my business like a team, maybe a little too familial at times, but, I don't mind, people being real. But you also have to execute, class starts at 6 a.m. It doesn't start at 6:01. After 2 or 3 of those conversations, then there's no more conversations.
Yeah, we have to divorce our work life from our family history. It always comes up. It's completely normal to do that, but we really have to kind of differentiate. Oh, this human is not a parental figure, and I've been sort of treating him that way, or feeling him or her as my mom or dad or caregiver, whatever person you want to put in that place. And it's easy to do. Or brothers and sisters on a team, or somebody who's an extrovert, takes up all the talk space in group conversations. Like, it reminds me of a big brother who just talked all the fucking time and didn't let me talk. If we're not aware of this, it will bleed out into your work life. It's normal, but we have to differentiate.
Yeah, that's right. And like self-awareness of like how you show up in these scenarios is paramount. In your experience, when people come up in your therapy sessions, they're trying to address these things. Like, what are the biggest, what tools do you use to reveal someone to someone their potential unresolved trauma that they have that keeps them from being happy and successful on a team or in a relationship? Like, how do you cue up those, what's your trailhead into that conversation?
We break out the MDMA and the ketamine. Hey, there is a place for that for trauma. First, it's all about building rapport and relationship. If that's not set in the therapeutic relationship, it won't be therapeutic. That person's going to leave, avoid, or come in and think they have to please you. That's a big one for a lot of caregivers. Like they're like, oh, I didn't really know what to talk about, and I need to see you in 2 weeks so I can think about and prep what I need to talk about, so they can say they did all the things that we talked about, so they can impress me. It's like, bro, just come. Your homework is to come in with no idea what we're talking about, and then the people that come in with agendas, I'm like, you need to do the opposite, or with no agenda, you need to come in with like, they're the ones that are collapsers. Like they're just meandering. Let's get you some structure. I'm going to give you homework. Do X, Y, and Z, and then do tell me about it. So you have to find that flavor, what kind of personality they are, where they're coming from. That's in the rapport building, when they feel like you have their best interests and they know that you care. And that's in itself so healing. They might have never experienced that before. Somebody that sits and listens and empathizes and is attuned to me, sometimes for the very first time, it's just like, it's so healing. But it kicks off all the attachment stuff. But that's what you want. You want the attachment system to get triggered, because that's where the pain is. They're transferring their stuff onto you as the attachment figure, borrowing your nervous system, and we have countertransference back to that person. Oh, I'm feeling this thing in response to them. Let me ask them about that. Let me use my nervous system. I'll be like, it seems like our conversations are kind of boring. Do you feel that? Like, yeah, like it's really boring. I need more from you. And like, okay, that's good information for me, and that we're teaching them that dialogue, like say what you think and feel, not to entertain me and not to avoid me. Let's have a authentic, deep connection here. And the first few sessions are all about that. And we can get into, the intake and give me all your family history and symptoms. We want to know that. But I really kind of ease into that. I don't slam them with that right away. Like, tell me about the time you were, abused. Like, we're not going to do that the first session unless they really want to. I'm not going to push that because they don't know me. There's a trust factor that's not there yet. So that's the biggest thing. That's so underestimated, just sitting and listening and just like letting people talk and just giving reflective statements back, like goes so far in therapy. And then we can go deep. But if that's not there, you can have all the fancy trainings and techniques in the world. It's just not going to work. Has to be a good fit.
Well, you said that the key phrase there, building rapport and showing them through the boundaries that you set up and the structure of your communication that you have their best interest at heart.
Mm-hmm.
And giving them a sense of psychological safety.
Yep.
We're going to go into the conversation about what makes somebody coachable and how they can show up or how they show up or don't. So like we'll call it a spectrum because it probably is. It is, definitely is. And coachable is the way that I frame it in the fitness industry is like everyone has some level of resistance to change. Now, on the very most open, they'll have some verbal resistance and physical discomfort when you say, hey, you're going to have to do this at this time and show me the pictures of your food. And they're going to be like, facial expressions change. They'll ask questions that's the manifest of the resistance.
Bingo.
And on the other end is almost no, they're flooded. I mean, they almost no questions, no engagement. That's way too much.
Overwhelmed.
Way too overwhelmed. And they're so ashamed or hostile to that it's not a possibility. And because it's not a possibility, they don't have any questions. They're like, I'm definitely not doing that. Like it's not threatening to me because I will not be in the path of that conversation. And so that's the far end of it. And there's a spectrum. So we'll want to get into how you read the coachability. But my first time in therapy, I didn't know that like I was like a slam dunk because I'm such a sensitive person and so emotive. I did my intake and the therapist was like, so you're having issues with your family, because I couldn't sleep. There was a lot of family real-time family drama and pain and emergencies going on. My mom was going into the hospital a lot for much more complicated things, and I was overwhelmed. And so I didn't know what boundaries were. I didn't know what anything was. And I was never been in therapy, hadn't even read any of these books or, this is my first conversation. I was like, I'll do anything you want me to do. I'll read any book. My way is not working. I'm here. I was like, I just don't want to talk about anything that happened to me before I was 18.
You put yourself in a lose-lose scenario.
and he was just looked at me and he just like nodded and he was like, it's like,
I've seen this before.
You give me a bullseye and then you point out and draw an X on where the bullseye really is.
Yeah.
you're like, I think we're gonna get there.
Yeah. But he didn't push you there right away.
He was like, he let me lead the conversation, and then like in 15 minutes he was like, what was your first memory? Just boom, tears.
Yep.
Just
and you felt comfortable. Yeah.
Exploded. I was a little bit comfortable. I understood it was, I trust the clinical setting, and like I was just unattached about how I was perceived at that particular moment. And I was so ready for change.
I was just gonna say you were ready. That's what I love when people come in when they're at rock bottom, they're just like so open to help. The resistances are kind of down. They'll be there from time to time, but they're like, yeah, just tell me, I just need help, and they're more receptive to where you want to go, together.
And this is why communication and marketing is so important. And just on that note of the receptivity to change, because when you're in pain, imagine like a wavelength of a radio frequency, which goes up and down like waves in an ocean. And we get into a cycle of we hit the pain thing, and then we ride this frustration up into this realm of unacceptable pain. But we're only cresting the top of that wave for 24 hours, 7 days, a
Right.
month.
Right.
If it's a physical ailment, maybe while we are on crutches, the level of unacceptability is very temporary. And then we sink down into either we numb it out or our life just sweeps us back into that wave pattern again.
Homeostasis.
And so many people have the experience of when I need help, I reach out, and by the time someone gets back to me, it's
past.
And then we've missed the window of pain and unacceptability. And the thing that saved me when I was a kid is I was in the middle of the nonsense and it wasn't going away. And it was an on-site clinic at PSU. And I looked it up online. I walked in. I said, I don't have an appointment, but I'd like to do an intake. I did an intake. They had a standby person just for that. And so within 3 hours, I was talking to somebody.
That's great.
And that, I don't think that exists outside of a
clinical setting.
Yeah, where you can
a campus or a VA or something. Not a VA, probably.
Right.
Come back in 3 months.
I don't know of any place that isn't some sort of institution that you could do that with.
A walk-in.
And one of the things, we don't have any sponsors yet, but BetterHelp, it tried to bridge that gap. And you may not like the delivery mechanism or the cost or the
online aspect.
You may not like any of those things, but what it does do is it delivers during your pain. It gets you in front of someone.
Fair.
And that's the biggest upside, because I think that's why I got so much from therapy. I had a great provider, and I also was ready, and it was synchronous. But the asynchronous of the whole healthcare system is the opposite of that.
Oh yeah.
It's next to impossible to find somebody, and then if you do, getting in front of them on time, and then when they finally do reach you and you sit down, and how do you assess readiness or coachability or what that quality? How do you even describe it
in this setting? Yeah, people come in various times on that frequency. You can tell when they're like it's up, or they're like it's been up and I've kind of put it off, or I'm here. I just have a conversation, meet them where they're at. That's basically, where are you? Let's meet them where you're at. I don't have an agenda for you. Let's just talk. Let's build that rapport, and then we go from there. I don't have a 10-point plan. I have ideas. They might have put something in the intake and they fill out paperwork, and I know some general ideas of what the bigger picture is. So that's always in my back pocket to address at some point. And then we'll talk about what are your goals? What do you want to achieve? What do you want to work on together? And that gives, especially men, it gives us something to tangibly shoot for. And then it's like that's the point of being here. Oh, that's why I'm here. We kind of need that. It gives a little structure to it.
Well, that kind of need to. I mean, everybody needs some sort of transaction for their time.
Yeah. What are we doing here? Yeah.
And in this day and age, I'm sure it's men, for sure it's men, but it's also, everybody is sort of we've talked to enough people who don't care that now we we're very mindful of who we're spilling our guts to. Do people in their intakes, people write their trauma on the intake? They're like, yeah, I was totally abused or whatever.
Some do. Some go into great lengths, and then I'm like, okay, this maybe a person maybe has some boundary issues, maybe has personality disorder issues, oversharing, or they're just really hurting. Mostly it's like a sentence, or they leave it blank a lot of times, and it's fair to leave anything blank in the intake. It's not like you got to fill it out. As long as you put your demographics, the stuff I need for billing. Like, don't worry about it. We'll talk about it. I might ask, oh, why did you leave that blank? Or I saw you put one word there. Want to talk about that now? Something like that. But
Mom.
yeah, totally. And it's still a trailhead. Like, okay, there's probably a lot of resistance around that topic. Totally okay. Meet them where they're at.
Yeah. So, how do you know, what are the characteristics of somebody who is ready to change versus somebody who's dug in?
I think most people that come in have a variety of ready to change. If you've looked someone up, taken the time, there's a part of you that wants change. You've come in. And that's why I'm a big proponent of in-person therapy versus online. It's better than nothing. But like, if you make the effort to get out of the house and spend the money and make the trek, and the therapist does too. All these therapists like, oh, I can stay in my pajamas and work from home. Like, bro, like, are you showing up for your people too? Like, why are you doing that? I get the convenience, but come on, that's going to come across to your patient maybe. So like, be careful with that. And we know like people that are depressed, like often get out of the house, and getting them to the house is like, that's a big first step. Like to get out of the environment that has all the triggers and cues to be the same depressed person every day. They get out of the house, get some sunlight, and they start to change. In some studies, they've even shown that even scheduling the appointment, you start to feel better. Hope's coming, So there's something to do with that too. So everyone's at a different level. Some people come in dug in still, or like, this is a classic one. My wife said I need to come to therapy. She's going to end the relationship unless I come, and I have to appease her somehow. So tell me what to do. That's the dug in one. Actually, those are the sometimes easiest to work with because they have so much resistance. You just push a little way that way, and then it all comes out. They just had no idea that, oh, this is for me too, and I have part of this relationship problem.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's like I am a great, if you ask me, I'm a great partner. But I like the idea that I want that positive feedback from my girlfriend. Like I want her to know that I'm showing up and putting in the work and getting new ideas and how to work on a relationship. And not that I want to impress her, but I want to put in as much effort and love into our relationship as she is. And I want that acknowledgement, and I also want the benefits. Like it benefits me to be a good partner, because then when I make mistakes, I get leeway, and because there's trust built from depositing the capital, and so if someone comes in because their partner wanted them to some degree, they want to be a good partner. That's why they're there.
Yeah, capitalize on that.
Let's dig into that. So someone who comes because their wife wants them to, what are the like easy wins, right, that you give them to one, feel successful in the therapy session, and two, to be successful in their relationship? Like what is coming, like what do you like unlock for them?
Well, like you said, give them credit for even coming in. And yeah, you must really care. That's on some level to be here. And they might not even taken that in. I got to do this to not get divorced or someone's going to leave me. Well, you must care about the relationship on some level. And sometimes that's a little bit of an eye opener. Oh, maybe this is for me. And then you pull on that thread a little bit. Or it's the nice guy, caretaker guy, and maybe the wife actually is more of the problem. Like she's not willing to do any work. I always ask, oh, is she doing her therapy too? It's like, no, she's not interested. I'm like, okay. In the back of my mind, we have a problem. Like you're doing all the work for the relationship and she's probably offloading all of the work onto you. And it's like she's to use the personal trainer analogy, she's saying, I need to, lift weights and eat better. Can you go ahead and do that for me? Go to the gym and work out and eat better and come back home and I'll be better. That's the emotional version of that. Like that obviously doesn't work. But the caretakers, men or women, will try to do that to please and appease the avoidant spouse or whatever's going on. They're saying you're the problem. You need to unscrew yourself and then everything will be fine. Little do they know, like I'm going to come back and give them tools and boundaries. And that wife is like, why did I send this person to therapy? Because now they're getting stronger and now there's a threat to the power in the relationship and they get mad. And it's like, well, that's what happens,
Who wrote the book Nonviolent Communication? Remember that?
Marshall Rosenberg.
Marshall Rosenberg. he says it in, or is it that or Crucial Conversations? But I think it was Nonviolent Communication. He was talking about the act of doing this. I think he says the person who cares more about the relationship will read this book. He's like, and unfortunately, it's the rich get richer here
Bingo.
because you will now know more about what is going on with your partner,
You'll outgrow them probably.
and you'll outgrow them at least in the short term because you're willing to do the work, and your partner will feel the
Change.
two things. Well, the partner will feel safe because they feel understood, right?
You hope so.
If you're giving that to them, and then they will also understand themselves for the first time,
Yeah.
and then that they may be in a position to do some changing of their own.
Yeah, if they're willing to grow with you, that's great. That's why I always encourage both of them, if it's a couples issue, both of them to be there in their own therapy, and then a therapist that they both share, that they both agree is a good fit. That's another one. Like, sometimes a wife will choose a therapist that feels good to her, and the guy gets beat up on her, vice versa. And like, no, you both have to agree that this therapist has both your best interests in hand, and then it's the trifecta. And if you want to join a men's group, icing on the cake, even better. And I mean, that's a lot of time and money, but you will grow real quick if you do that.
It feels like, and on this whole conversation around the problems that you run into in work or in relationships and the communication that you have in struggling with your, whether it's something fairly intense like depression. You've mentioned depression a lot. It feels like there's this underlying component of shame.
Hmm.
And when you mentioned it, it just rang for me when you talked about couples therapy, and my ex-wife and I went to couples therapy for a year, and we both were so wrapped up in our shame that neither of us could really be vulnerable for that person. And she wasn't, the counselor was a great, enthusiastic person and wanted to figure it out, but didn't know how to unwrap that. How do you get people to be vulnerable, even if it's just a small amount, when they're in in that place where it's the unknown unknowns, it's the unconscious, and when it starts to become conscious, they repress it more actively because they don't want to admit that they have either a trauma, or they have trauma around their needs. They've enmeshment or physical abuse, and they have shame around even having basic needs of connection or love or sex or whatever it is.
Hmm.
How do you even tackle that or begin to unspin that ball of yarn?
Well, you can sort of name that or make an observation that might be happening, but us therapists, like, we can only do as much as you guys give. It's like, back to the personal trainer analogy. Like, I can't be the one doing all the heavy lifting. If I'm working harder than the patient, something's not right. That's not what's supposed to be happening. It's a sign, like, okay, I'm really stressed. I need to check out what's going on with my parts, with me. Maybe this is a pattern for them. They're just good at getting people to do things for them. Oh, maybe that's part of their issue. Let's name that, and that's the countertransfer issue, where it feels like I'm doing a lot of the talking here. Does that kind of fit in your life? Do you feel like people are giving you a lot of advice and you kind of just wait for people to tell you what to do? Trailheads, you can kind of make observations, and it might not resonate, and that's fine. You want to know where they're at. Sometimes it's like, yeah, or they have like this big overreaction to it, and it's like, okay, no, we'll circle that a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
But the example you gave, I would just make observations as much as I could. It feels like there's an impasse here. It feels like we're kind of talking about the same things. I wonder if it's threatening for you to say X, Y, and Z in front of your wife. Just things like that.
Well, what's hard is if you're listening to this, your mind, if you're smart, your mind will come up with even better rationale for your defenses.
Mhm.
So unfortunately, this is one of those things where it's like a intersection between how much pain are you in and motivation do you have to change, and how much time and how smart you think you are. Because when I remember, this is halfway through my self discovery, part of my life, and I could intellectualize the right answers,
Oh yeah,
and
especially men.
and she would be like, well, how do you feel about initiating sex? Or how do you feel about, setting boundaries? And I'd be like, oh, I totally am. My needs are valid and things like that. And I would regurgitate the sort of clinical like language I had read in books
And never give her a feeling.
and never be emotionally honest.
Yep.
And, and I think if you're listening to this and you say like, no, but like, I get it.
Logically.
And you have a hard time being emotionally honest, then I'm talking to you. And like, you're the one with the avoidant behavior or the disconnect problem. And you're the person that, is having the repeated conflict. Then it's you. It's you. I know Miles is not supposed to say that, but it's okay. Because
It's okay.
if you can just name that,
Yes.
then you are 8/10 of the way there, and the other 2/10 are the part about just letting yourself be the weaker one or the vulnerable one. Or
It's not weakness, it's strength.
yeah, but it feels weak in the moment.
Totally feels weak, but it's not. Yeah. And that's why, especially men, we got to get them out of the heads and into the body. There's a lot more wisdom there. And like you said, you gave all the explanations and rationalizations and logic. Yeah, it all makes sense, but what's going on beneath your chin? What's going on in your chest? When she says that, what happens here? It's not, what do you, Connor Beaton talks about this a lot, and a lot of therapists say, how does that make you feel? And I ask a guy how they feel. They'll tell you about how they think about how they're feeling. And you're just going back and forth, but what sensations are you feeling in your chest right now? And then you might get to an emotion, and that's a different wisdom. And you didn't notice that you're super ragey and pissed off. And up in your head, you're rationalizing, well, she said this and that, and I'm right, I'm scorekeeping, blah, blah, blah. Beneath your chin, you're raging, you're pissed off, you're defended, maybe like you're hurt, and you're not even going there. And if we can go there, that opens up all of the smart doors. Because a lot of, like we said in the last podcast, a lot of this trauma is pre-verbal from attachment wounds, and we don't know, it's in our bodies, and we don't even know how to put words to it yet because we didn't have words.
And it's a practice of disassociating. You're so practiced at squeezing away the pain.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where like numbing behaviors come into play, which is so funny. So funny that I had them all. But what I will say is Miles talks fast, but being in your body, and my therapist almost always, that's really where we go.
Somatic.
Yeah. And it's because the intellectualization of it, and there's something to your observations, but your felt experience is the guide to so much of your story, the work you're trying to do, whoever you are listening to this podcast. It's so much of your felt experience is going to reveal the truth. And that is your first anchor point on climbing up out of that ravine, because it can't be embedded in a thought. You can't anchor to an idea. Your identity is fluid, but your body is like the timeless vessel of all of your experiences. And my body has a emotional vibration or resonance with every memory, idea, experience that I've ever consciously or unconsciously had. And the more of this work that I did, the closer I get to being authentic.
It's your nervous system.
Yeah. And I have a personal question on learned helplessness versus failure to thrive.
Like babies failure to thrive. Mm-hmm. Some crossover there, yeah.
Learned helplessness is like more functional about a specific thing. Failure to thrive is more general. I'm like, this baby is not responding to food or to reach for food the way that we mammals learn to reach for food.
Yeah, that's sort of evolutionary. If you're not touched and held, there's that. It wasn't an experiment. I think it happened in Romania post World War II. They'd had a ton of orphan kids, babies, and there was nuns or nurses trying to take care of like hundreds of kids, of babies, and they had like 4 nurses, and they had them all these in their baby buckets, and they're screaming and crying, and like run around feeding, change diapers, and like a lot of them were just dying. And like, why is this even happening? Like they're fed, but they weren't being picked up, touched, soothed, all the things that they need. And I don't know what it is. There's something about a baby that maybe it's evolution that we just, okay, let's check out now because there's no points in living because we're going to die anyway. So we're just going to switch it off. I don't know if there probably are studies that show why and how that happens. I just can't recall them. But yeah, it's the failure to thrive thing. And there could be other things going on like SIDS or whatever. But that was a big eye opener for a lot of humanity when a recent history when that was talked about. And then learned helplessness is going down that road, but your baby brain's like, okay, it's not that bad. We're going to live. But we got touched sometimes and got our basic needs met. Our diapers were changed, we got fed, but we got thrown in the crib a lot and made to cry it out. Didn't get seen a lot. And we just kind of like give up in a way, like no one's going to help me. No one's going to mentor me. I'm just always helpless. I just can't do it. The world's too big, too much. Or they got smothered and said, oh yeah, the world's too big. I'll take care of your every need. And just don't worry about, we're not going to put you in sports or put you out there. We'll keep you home. And then they're stuck in their parents' basement playing video games till they're 48. I can't do it. I can't get a job. It's just too much. And then the parents probably enable it and keep it going. And that's another sign of dysfunction. That's the collapsing thing within. My needs didn't get met. I'll collapse within myself and kind of just sit in shame rather than raging out, is the opposite. That's where sort of the lone wolf, self-made kind of person in a not good sense could come from. I'm so mad at you caregivers that you didn't do this. I'm going to get so angry and act out so you see me, act out my emotions so you finally see me. I'm going to get in trouble because you don't see me unless I get in trouble. Oh, that's the move? You actually pay attention when I take the crayons out and draw on the wall or get in trouble in class, and you guys actually see me? Okay, that's what I'm going to do unconsciously. You want to stay in attachment with your caregiver. If that's the move, that's the move. And then you take that out into the world, and like that's just what you keep doing. I just plow through. People see me when I am angry, or whatever the move is. So either collapse into self or rage outwards are typically the two that manifests in insecure attachment when your needs aren't met.
Well, we were talking on our walk, the seminal injury for so many of us is our purpose for the first length of our life is to make our parents happy, versus our purpose is to grow as a individual human, as a fully functional human.
Your parents are supposed to foster that, not the other way around.
When we come out of the womb, we actually haven't finished gestating.
No.
So that first year or two out of the womb you're really just an amoeba that your parents keep alive. And along the way, your personality kind of shows up pretty fast.
Yeah, some hardwired stuff.
And the friction comes into play when the parents want you to be a good little boy or be a good little girl and make mommy and daddy happy and get good grades and play nice with others and never embarrass me in public and never have a problem, never, throw your food, never make any other kids upset, never, question authority. And really early on, we have to choose between being wild and being domesticated. And if our parents are people who wanted our life to look like a finished puzzle, then they give us the painting and tell us to try and make it make sense for you.
Paint my numbers.
When the parents who are evolved to a high degree know that my son or daughter is a builder, my son or a daughter is a guitarist, she's a musician, she's a doctor, and now what tools can I give her that will make her the best version of herself?
Bring themselves out of themselves, foster what you see coming out naturally. Yeah. Not what you think they should be.
I have a friend. I got to send them both texts. They're both lovely people, but I have two friends that are raising two very different kids. One is like a genius slash maybe slightly autistic, kid who like builds engines in the garage, and one is like a more social, emotional sort of politicker kind of, kid. Also, both very smart, both very, but they deal with their emotions differently. They
Mhm.
deal with this conflict differently, and one of them is, allowed to be on his phone because he's solely using it to watch YouTube on how to build a thing, and then he constructs things. The other one's not allowed to use YouTube because he figured out what you could find on the internet. and
Yeah, boundaries.
but they're different. They're given different tools, and their privileges are different based on how they interact with the world.
Mhm.
And it's like, yeah, your brother doesn't have a sugar addiction, so your brother doesn't have a limit to
There you go.
what he can eat because he's underweight, and you're fine. And when we left to your own devices,
Mhm.
you eat all the cookies. So we're just going to treat you differently.
They give him the why, which is good. Otherwise, like, why does my brother get the phone and I don't? Now I have resentment. No, this is why. And then the kid goes, oh, okay, that I don't like that, but that kind of makes sense. You don't get the why. That's not a good story.
Well, yeah. And we want you to be a successful version of you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in
Great
a few
statement.
years, you're going to ignore everything we say. So it doesn't matter anyway. So, like, right now, while we have a choice,
Yeah.
we're not going to make you into psychopaths.
Yeah, it's exactly right. Yeah.
So, but we don't all have the experience of being parented that holistically, that wisely.
Mm-mm.
Most of us had to compromise ourselves for our caretakers or guardians, and maybe there was a role reversal, or who knows what it was. But somewhere along the way, compromise happened. That's what makes being alive an adventure. And to bring it back to the failure to thrive and learned helplessness, like connection, our ability to connect with ourselves and the people who love us and provide support for us to connect with us will determine our quality of life, our mental health to a large degree,
Mm-hmm.
and our passion around the work we do and our role in our community.
Our personal power.
And I think to the one of the undercurrents of the conversation was that shame and repressed emotions are the landmines in this journey that we have to dance around, but we can also just disarm them if we know what they are and that they're
Mhm.
there. Sometimes we have to know why they're there, but it doesn't necessarily, you don't need to know why every single landmine's there, but once you know it's there, I always think like having good listening skills makes you a dangerous person because you understand context better than most.
Mm.
Boundaries, if you understand boundaries, you just get into fewer issues because you're not resenting other people,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't think of relationships as burdensome
Right.
because you are like, oh no, I don't need to be available to help you move. I don't do that.
Mm-hmm. And boundaries for yourself too.
That's correct. Yeah, that's exactly right. Like my bedtime is 10
Mm-hmm.
unless I'm at a Pearl Jam concert, and then it's 1.
Yeah, you got to live too.
You got to live a little bit.
Vices, right?
That's right. Anything else that we should talk about before we wrap up?
I'm not sure. I mean, as always, there's so much we could side quest on with all these conversations, but that's good because that's more for future podcasts. But we can keep weaving these in and out as we go. Like I said last podcast, like attachment theory is very underrated in our field, and relationships are very underrated in humanity, and they really matter, and how to do them really matters, and knowing what health looks like and doesn't really matters, and healing really matters, and growing really matters. So yeah, that's my final thought, I guess.
Yeah, and I agree. And modeling all those things as best you can from people who are doing it, have done it, and maybe even done it the way you want.
Sounds good. Yeah, and we'll have some guests coming on in the future. It'll be pretty cool when we start doing that. I think you'll like who we have coming. TBD, but you'll know because you'll see them on the episode list.
That's right. right? Go out, heal yourself, heal your relationships, have more fun, and walk the path of the warrior.
Go do the Murph. All right, we're out.